Job number J-20245198-2. We're accessing the drain again through the 4-inch PVC stack cleanout tee located next to the laundry tub. We're looking at the flow of the city main sewer. We've spent some time doing some extensive root cutting, and so this is an after video showing the condition of the pipe. Also, we have a very slow amount of water running at the laundry tub currently to be able to observe flow characteristics of the piping and see where any water might be also accumulating aside from the roots. We're looking at the flow of the city main sewer. We can see a tuft of root that was cut loose and is currently just sitting in the city main sewer. Another loose piece of root here, passing back into the lateral, 6-inch clay lateral. Another piece of loose root, just sitting there currently, ready to flush on through. Another piece of loose root. And another piece of loose root. We can prove that by pushing forward, and we can see that the mass comes along with the camera, so we know that that piece is not fastened in place. Moves around, so loose piece of root. Another loose piece of root. So far with our constant flow of water at the laundry tub, we see a small trickle at the bottom, which is what we would ideally like to see the whole way. Starting here at about 112, 113, we have pooling water right here, starting at 112. Also visible at the top is some fracturing of the clay at 110. So this moderate pool goes from about 110 to 112 with some fracturing in the middle. Another fracture visible at 106 on the top left quadrant of the pipe. It's actually visible now with the camera cleared off. It's visible on the left and right sides. Fracturing continuing through this segment. Fracturing through this segment is a little more extensive on the top, spiral-like fractures. And off to the bottom and the sides there. Finer fractures visible at 102. extending from 102 to this through 100, the joint at 100. Fractures are spiraling through this next section, a little bit finer, but they're there. We have some loose root on the bottom, remaining root on the top, cut back nicely compared to what it was. So from 98 to 102 we have some fracturing there. We also have pooling water visible downstream end at 99. This pooling water section goes for a while, gets deeper along the way. It's cut back nicely at 96. It's cut back nicely at 94. It's cut back nicely, spiral fracture at the top visible at 93. Loose root. Root's cut back nicely. Roots remaining at 88, cut back nicely. Pooling water continuing through this section. Fracture visible at the top at 84. Pooling water continuing. Roots cut back nicely at 82. Pooling water continuing. Roots cut back nicely at 80. Pooling water getting a bit deeper in some of these sections here. Water continuing. Again, the downstream end of this pooling water section was at 99. Let's cut back nicely at 51. Cut back nicely at 48, slight change in direction. Upstream end of this pooling is 48, so from 48 to 99 we have significant water pooling. Let's cut back nicely at 46. Roots cut back nicely at 44. Roots cut back nicely at 40. Y visible at the top. Another Y visible at the top. One of those two Ys would be our building cleanout. 35 is another downstream point of pooling water. Moderate pooling water persists as we enter in underneath the basement floor. nicely at 23, almost 24. Cooling water continuing. Transition from clay to PVC. Pooling water, upstream end of the pooling water is at about 15 to 16 and extends down to 35 feet on the counter. So building drain sits with some water. We have newer PVC going up the base of the stack. Access through the PVC stack. Going to switch to larger spacer bushing to be able to elevate the camera out of the water in the pooling sections to improve visibility. Going to pause. Went back to the main here. We pushed pause for a second, put on a thicker spacer on the end of the camera head so we will see more of an elevated view. Again, we've got just a trickle of water running at the laundry tub so we can observe flow characteristics. Camera head will be pointed a little more upward now so we can get a better perspective of what's going on around the top and sides of the pipe. So far through this section, if we go forward, we can see there's just a nice little trickle of water. No accumulation. That's what we would want to see the whole way. Approaching our first area where we have some challenges. We can see some fracturing happening on the top of the pipe and some unevenness there and roots. Also at 110, it's hard to see, but from 112 to 110, 100 to 112, we have moderate pooling, but this camera spacer makes it hard to see that. And here we see some spiral fracturing going across the top. Roots here were significant. We've cut those back nicely as much as possible. A couple thicker taproots remaining. We can see the persistent water pooling sitting on the bottom. This would be moderate. So it's cut back nicely there. We have the downstream area of some more significant spiral fracturing happening at 106 and backwards. As we pull back, we can see the lateral fracturing at the top and then splitting off into multiple fracture points. Also of moderate concern is the bottom of the pipe here. We can see a little more spacing happening, gapping happening between the clay joint chunks. Concern exists whether pieces there would want to dislodge any further camera work or snake work. So here we have a pretty significant pipe fracturing scenario from 104 to 106. Another fracture section downstream end at 102. Finer fractures here, but they are there. Splintering off into different directions on the top and the sides. Fine fracturing continuing. A little more significant there at the end of the joint. So from 98 to 102 we have another section fracturing. Roots are cut back nicely. Again, harder to tell because the camera is elevated, but 99 is the downstream end of this next pooling section. Extends back to 48. If we go forward, we can see the water waves forward, showing that it's just sitting around. Another fine fracture at 93. Let's cut back nicely. Another fine fracture at 91. Cooling water continuing. We can see if we go forward, it's still waving when we go forward. Let's cut back nicely at 88. Let's cut back nicely at 86. Minor fracture at 84. Let's cut back nicely at 82. Let's cut back nicely at 80. Cut back nicely at 78. Cooling water is still there. Let's cut back nicely at 76. Let's cut back at 74. Let's cut back at 71. Forward, we can still see the water is cooling there through this section. Let's cut back at 65. It's at 63. Let's cut back at 61. Water is still through this section. We can see it when we go forward. It's at 59. It's at 57. Cooling water still there. It's at 55. Thicker taproot at 51, cut back pretty well. It's at 49. Would be the upstream point where the pooling starts, and right tapers. It's hard to see it, but it's right there. It's tapers at the joint to beginning it. So that's 49 to 99, 48 to 99. Here we had some other significant root penetrations. Cut back as much as possible. Pretty thick root remaining at the top, but all the smaller stuff is trimmed off at 46. Another large root mass at 44, trimmed back, leaving just the thicker taproot at the top. Another root was here at 41, trimmed back pretty well. Another root trimmed back at 40. We have our first Y at the top. Our second connection at the top, entering the home. Also of note is we have moderate pooling starting here at about 35. It's visible on the earlier part of this video. Then we have the shorter, the thinner spacer. If we go forward, we can see the water is waving, indicating that it's hanging out. Penetration at 23-24, cut back as much as possible, some thicker roots remaining. Also we can see the pooling water is still here. Moderate pooling continuing back. Pooling still there. Pooling exists right up to the point where we jump back into from 6-inch clay to 4-inch PVC. So it suggests that the clay inside the house has some challenges with pitch. Looking at the base of the PVC stack.